All right, and welcome to the chapter 3. This is chapter 3 of the ISC square. At this point, you are learning about the access controls. So we are just going to go into it. There's so much information on it. But I would just try to explain a little bit about access controls, and basically, I'm have to draw it up, right? So first thing you want to learn about access controls is what it's all about, right? So when we mention access controls, there are some basic things you should understand first. There are some really, really important parts of it that you should understand, right? The first thing you should know is a subject. The second thing is called an object. And the last thing are called rules, right? Now, access control basically is all about what someone has access to and the rules that applies to it, right? You're controlling how they can have access to something. The subject is a person or entity. Let's just put an entity, because it could be anything. It could be a PC, it could be a system, it could be even a building that is request information or something, The guy making the request or the system making the request is the subject at that point. The system that is actually servicing that request could even be a building, could be a PC, could be another person, is the object, right? And the rules are just basically you know, the rules, the rules that apply to the subjects receiving the information or the object providing that information. That is basically what most of it is all about. So let's quickly consider a scenario over here. We have, as usual, our Mr. A trying to access this particular PC that has confidential information, and he wants to get some information from this particular PC, right? E in this case is our subject, and that PC is the object at that particular point, because E is making the request for the information. If the PC was making the request instead, that PC becomes the subject and E becomes the object. But then the rules for communicating or the rules for giving off that information is where we begin to draw the lines. So rules will always apply between both of them, and the rules will dictate how the subject would access the object's information. I hope that has made some things clear. So we're just going to try to go through some of them. And what security control is a safeguard or countermeasure designed to preserve the CIA. So basically, when you have a security control, it's protecting confidentiality, integrity, and availability. And all it's all about is the subject and the object, what they can access. So we are moving into the controls overview to check what's on it. And there we have the three elements which I just mentioned. We have the subject, and we have some things in there. We have the object, which is also some things in there. And we have the bunch of rules, which is just a bunch of instruction to control how they communicate. And then we have what we call the control assessment. I'm going to go through this. And basically, with control assessment, you are checking to make sure and how access is given to what. Now, the problem with this control assessment per se, the major thing about it that we should all be aware of is, for instance, there might be a protection here between the subject and the object. Possibly, let's just assume it's a wall. The issue with this wall is that you do not want your control measure to be way more expensive than what you are protecting, right? Like, why would the wall be just more expensive than the information? So at that point, it won't exactly make sense, because then you are, especially if the information is not such an important one, you don't need to put something too expensive to protect it, which is what is being tried to explain here. Right? The cost of implementing the controls must align with the value of what is being protected. Then we move to defense in depth. When we're talking about defense in depth, it means you have multiple layers to security. For instance, the subject has to provide is authentication details, identification details, then that's username and password. Maybe even have to put an MFA, and before he even gets to the PC, he has to go through the fence that has security guards on it. That whole process of multiple layers to security is called defense in depth. Defense in depth. So that's basically what is about it. So layer defense is the use of multiple controls, and defense in depth is integrating basically people, technology, operations, everything together into a particular security. So we have an asset, we have administrative controls around the asset, we have logical and technical controls, and we have physical controls right around it. Physical controls is physical, of course, like a fence, bollards, the door locks, the turnstiles, whatever it is. The logical technical controls would be the firewalls, the username, passwords, and all those things. And the administrative controls would be the policies, right? So that is about defense in depth, and we have some videos there. And now we're talking about least privilege. I'm going to need to explain this a little bit so that it gets way more understandable. So for least privilege, right? Least privilege comes in play when a user, or rather a subject, tries to access an information, right? So what you want to do in this particular situation, especially when you have multiple users in your organization, all asking for the same access to information. Now, for access to this confidential information, there might be a situation where this particular user needs to do something that requires admin privilege. Now, what the least privilege simply points to is that you don't give everybody administrative privileges. You give them what they need to carry out the job functions, for their job functions, not more. You give them exactly what they need for that particular job function. So when we are looking at the privilege, at the least privilege, right, we're looking at using exactly what is needed. You don't give an help desk admin privileges to actually end up controlling the organization, right? You don't give a normal user the privilege identity. You have to give them what they need to make their job work. That's how it is. For instance, an help desk might actually just need access to an help desk, for instance, like this, might need to reset usernames and passwords, and that might actually need that person to have admin privileges. But instead of giving that admin privilege, you can give him just the property of resetting usernames and passwords. That is you exercising least privilege, right? That is what least privilege is all about. So we are moving into privilege access management, and this is still on the principle of least privilege per se, but then you are allowed to access information with restrictions, right? So sometimes it comes with giving a time when you can log in, a time when you can log off, so that you don't have to keep doing that over and over again. So it's where just-in-time access was actually put in place, and with that, you can log in, or rather, you can have access to a particular information at a particular time. Right? That is what the just-in-time is all about. You can have access to information right when you need it. That is privileged access management, because there are some cases where the users really need to be on critical systems. So you just need to put that in place so that your users are able to, to access that information, but within a limited time frame. It would even increase a lot of logging anyway. So that is what we have in there. And then we move to privilege accounts. Privilege accounts are admin accounts. Basically, that's what they're about. They are admin accounts. They're accounts with elevated privileges. And that's what we go over here to explain, right? Privilege accounts will be used by security analysts, help desk or support staff, and even systems administrators. Of course, you're going to be logging more of their details, the records of what they do. You're going to be logging it a lot and be auditing the account more often, because these accounts are privileged accounts. They have ability to do some things, right? So that is why there's a lot of logging and auditing going on them. Also use MFA. MFA is multi-factor authentication. If you remember from when we mentioned something you know, something you have, something you are, right? Knowledge-based, attribute-based, and the other one. That was about the factors of authentication. And MFA, if you are implementing MFA, it's going to be for a privileged account, because that account can do some damage. So you need to make sure it is well protected. We have the next one being segregation of duties. Of course, everybody should have their duty, not that one person has everybody's duty. So when you have segregation of duties, you're actually making sure that everybody has a process, something to play to differentiate the next guy from this next guy, right? But then we have something called two-person integrity, right? This is when you use two people. It's just like saying two-factor authentication. It's when you use two people to access a particular security area. Like two people have to maybe put in their cards at the same time. Both of them have to be there for it to work. That is about two-person integrity. The next thing we have there is authorized versus unauthorized personnel. Yes, of course, you can both be authenticated, but some users are not authorized to go into some essential or some protected places, some important places. So that's the difference between the authorized and the unauthorized personnel. If an authorized personnel tries to access something, of course it will get it. Meanwhile, the unauthorized personnel will get rejected, because the system is going to keep checking if you're authorized or not. And then we have the roles and permissions under activity, and there we are supposed to contrast a regular account to a privileged account. And a regular account, what roles would they be? If you are looking at a regular account, you're going to look at I believe a part-time employee should have a regular account. Remote employee depends on the sense. Is he a remote privileged employee? But let's just put it in there, right? The chief information security officer should have a privileged account. The network admin should have a privileged account. System admin, privileged account. Full-time employee depends on what you are doing. You might not need a privileged account. Temporary employee might not need a privileged account. The manager or team lead should have a privileged account. So let's see, are we right? Yes, we are right. So we move on to the next one, privilege access management. A privilege account, okay, compare and contrast a regular user account to a privileged user account. A privileged account, one has access to interact directly with servers and other infrastructure devices. Yes, of course, because he would definitely need that access. And the next one has access to log on only to authorized workstations. Yep. It's most likely to have read only. No. When we talk about read only, that means you can't make changes to the information there. You can just read them. So no, this is not going to be a privileged account, as access levels are typically needed for daily business operations. Really it depends. It depends in the sense that what if its daily operations are not really critical operations? And as the lowest level of login, privilege accounts has really high level of login. At least they log it a lot, right? They log all their activities. Anything that's being done is sent to the logs, and we have should require the use of MFA. Yes, definitely, because privilege accounts are really important. Use the most stringent access control. Of course, they must use a very tight access control. As the highest level of login, of course, yes, we mentioned that. Often has the ability to create users and assign permissions. Yes, only privileged accounts are usually able to do that. So we kind of got, no, we missed that. Has access to log on only to authorize. Oh, no. That was an oversight on my side. I know some of you already detected it early on, but yep, I didn't even pick this. Okay, I don't know when I clicked it, but anyway, we move from there, and let's move straight into the next thing. That's actually the end for this particular one, and we are going to have the quizzes link in the description as usual. Of course, you can follow the playlist and subscribe if you want to, and just pass your ISC square and let us know if you really did well. Thank you very much.